Okay, so we're moving along, and now we have someone that I've vaguely gotten to know through LinkedIn posts and things like that. So, John, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. John Tomtishen, Global Head, Cell Therapy Field Application Scientist and Strategic Alliances at Catalent. Started my career off in vaccines at Merck's West Point site outside of Philly, also in bispecific monoclonal antibodies at Fox Chase Cancer Center, but the majority of my career has been in the cell and gene therapy space. So been involved in anything CMC related, drove the clinical development and commercial launch of Kymriah at Novartis, and then similarly drove the clinical development and commercial launch of Carvykti at Legend, and then prior to Catalent, I was at Solaris building out their CDMO business.
That's right. So Solaris is a company I've enjoyed Fabian's company for ages. I wish them well, right? So hard question to start with, actually. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, how is the cell and gene field different?
Yeah, so I think one of the things from a technical perspective, right? I think it's companies moving beyond the processes, the product, right? I think very early on, companies thought there was something really unique about their manufacturing processes, and you saw a lot of companies building out their own manufacturing facilities. But now, right, when you think of where the industry's at today, right, it's really that product is the product mindset perspective. That at the end of the day, what patients really care about is that quality target product profile, right, and the safety and efficacy profiles. So I think right now, how the industry is evolving and maturing, right, I think you're going to see more of an important role for CDMOs to play and support cell therapy developers advance their portfolio across the drug development lifecycle. The other component then too is right now you're actually starting to see these therapies move beyond hematological malignancies, right, moving beyond leukemias, lymphomas, and actually recently there was the first approval for a solid tumor with Cargen in China as well, right? So, and then also then even in the autoimmune space as well.
So, how to ask this question in the nicest way? So, will platforms merge going forward, and will there be only 3 or 4 standardized kind of major platforms from a technology point of view, but also from a business point of view? At some point, these things kind of coalesce, and I remember back in the day, proteomics, you had to have standards because none existed. We've kind of passed that point really for cell and gene, in that we know roughly what the standard should be, but we haven't really consolidated that yet in the real world.
Yeah, so I think when you think of the different platforms or modalities within the space, right, obviously I think autologous is still the standard bearer for the industry, right, when you think of the safety and efficacy profiles that you're still seeing. I think allogeneics lagged behind a little bit, right, but even if you think of ASCO a couple of weeks ago, there's really good data coming out of that perspective, and then also now with in vivo approaches as well. I mean, I always look at the end of the day from what does the patient really care about? Again, they only care about if the drug product's safe and efficacious. My personal viewpoint is that at the end of the day, any of these specific modalities could work, right? And ultimately, the drug products that win out are the ones, again, that have the best safety and efficacy profiles for patients. And that's one of the things for us at Catalent, right, where we're kind of platform agnostic, right? And we can work with companies across autologous, allogeneic, iPSCs, and even like traditional like tissue engineering with cell scaffolds and whatnot as well.
Yeah, no, size does matter in certain ways, right? So how do you deal, though, with a sort of fragmented supply chain from a supply chain point of view, in the sense that you're just dealing with more than a few types of requests?
Yeah, I think one of the key things, right, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to be able to deliver your drug product, right, to patients. And when you think of cell therapies, right, especially when you're thinking of an autologous cell therapy, it's that different mindset, right? Instead of a make to stock, it's make to order, right? So there's the additional complexity of not just shipping that drug product to the patient, but then also ensuring that you have that apheresis or starting material coming into your facility as well, right? So really maintaining that chain of custody and chain of identity throughout that process, I think, is something that's really important, right? And because of that and the complex logistics, right, you really need to work with partners within the space that has that experience to ensure that, again, you can actually get that drug product that's manufactured to those specific patients. That's one of the things for us at Catalent, where we offer our case management services to our clinical supply business to help therapeutic developers get that drug product to the patients wherever they are at, whether it's in the U.S. or globally.
Okay, well, since you're in a position to talk about scale and size from your perspective, if you could change one thing, just one variable in the landscape to make everything so much better, more patient access, lower cost, what one thing would you choose to change?
So I think, I'll do two things.
Nice.
So one of the things I think, one of the broader challenges with the industry is still on reimbursement for these therapies, right? And I know that's especially a challenge, right, when you think of the European markets right now, right? I mean, there's been several companies that have pulled their therapies out of the market, right? And I know the other component, though, too, right, that people often associate with drug pricing as COGS, right? There's not a direct correlation between the COGS of the manufacturer and what drug pricing is, but I think one of the things is as the industry, right, we need to be better at communicating the actual value proposition and how the cell therapies actually help the broader healthcare industry, right? And what's the potential benefit for patients? And then obviously on the manufacturing side of things, right? I think there's been a lot of improvements. I think you're going to continue to see a lot of technology innovation within the space, right? With various different automated platforms, and not just when you think of autologous cell therapies, though, too, right? But kind of across the board, then, too, right? For allogeneic, in vivo approaches, et cetera, as well, right?
Yeah, now I remember Peter Marks used to sort of mockingly look at his watch saying, when are the allogeneic, they're late, so, I've been waiting for them, right? So here's a question again about supply chains. How would you characterize a really resilient, strong supply chain versus an adequate one?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the best mark to measure supply chain efficiency, right, is vein-to-vein times, right? How often are you getting your drug product in a specific time window, right? So a resilient supply chain is that when you say a vein-to-vein time is 21 days, 20 days, whatever the length of your manufacturing process is, if you can consistently achieve that milestone, that means you have a robust and resilient supply chain, right? If you're only saying that you have a demonstrated vein-to-vein time of 20 days or whatnot, right, but aren't consistently meeting that target, then there's a lot of room for you to improve your overall supply chain orchestration and ultimately ensure that you can consistently deliver that drug product to patients in a specific time frame.
Yeah, now going back to your earlier point, I do think the industry really does a poor job at communicating the excellence and the benefit and the advances we've made. I think there's no group that shoulders that burden and does a good job with it. So vein to vein makes sense to us. I'm not sure out in the public it makes a ton of sense. So I do think there's a gap in between the messaging and the reality. And the reality is actually quite strong. Last question, looking ahead, how do you see the sort of cell therapy landscape shifting and I'm going to say improving?
I think, again, right, I mean, I think it's bringing in new different technologies, right? Again, focusing on manufacturing capabilities, right? Really ensuring that these therapies can be commercialized, right? I think you've moved beyond, so when I think of my time at Novartis, for example, or Legend, right, 10 plus years ago, right? It was really establishing that proof of concept that you can actually commercialize these therapies, but now over the next 5-10 years, I think you're going to see these, with the advancements within the space, that these actually become viable businesses for companies as well, right? I think you're also going to see then too, right, because of the industry's maturing, right, companies are really going to focus on developing assets in indications where they can ultimately dominate and win, right? Because at the end of the day, when you think of as a therapeutic developer, what determines market penetrance for your drug product is really time to market entry, right? Are you first, second, third to market? But then also, what is that overall quality target product profile, right? Again, from a safety and efficacy perspective, right? So I think that's where companies are really going to focus on and differentiating themselves instead of developing, say, an asset that's already that there is an existing asset for that specific disease or indication.
That's an excellent point. All right, so I'm going to be optimistic. Have we got a question for John? Come on, a question. I guess not. So I think the lunch lethargy set in, but I've enjoyed talking with you, John. And
thank you.
And you've got a great background. You've had a terrific career.
Thank you.